right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the L-5 podcast. Tonight we did a full-length feature that was a Jeremy's pick. Tonight's film was the documentary called The Social Dilemma, which is on Netflix streaming right now.
What I want people to know is that everything they're doing online is being watched, is being tracked. Every single action you take is carefully monitored and recorded.
I was the co-inventor of the Facebook like button.
I was the president of Pinterest,
Google,
Twitter, Instagram.
There were meaningful changes happening around the world because of these platforms. I think we were naive about the flip side of that coin.
We get rewarded by hearts, likes, thumbs up, and we conflate that with value and we conflate it with truth.
A whole generation is more anxious, more depressed.
I always felt like fundamentally it was a force for good.
If technology creates mass chaos, loneliness, more polarization, more election hacking, more inability to focus on the real issues, we're toast.
This is checkmate on humanity.
So, Jeremy, you want to kick off this discussion and give us your 17 minutes?
I do, but before we start, I would like to pull something out. You know, I love prompts, and so I want you to get your nearest pillow. Your pillow of choice. Mm-hmm. Yep, so Dana has one, Bryan has one.
Damn, I don't have no pillow.
Pillows over there, go get one.
Corey's gonna cue up his pillow. Uh-oh. And depending on how you feel about this film, you might need it. So yes, so Corey does have his pillow. So all of us have pillows. Yes. Now, before I start my 17 minutes, I would like to say there were moments in this film. I was about to straight sleep. There were moments I wanted to cuddle it. I was like, this is a little disturbing. So my 17 minutes, but I want you to hold on to these pillows. So what, like I said, whatever your pillow is, like Bryan is doing, I want you to hold on to it. Okay. First interesting thing I said about the 17-minute review. It reminds me of like my digital media class. It reminds me of like a psychology, a little bit of digital media. You're learning different things, but I didn't understand why they're lecturing at me. It felt like a lecture full of notes and full of, I don't know if you have your captions on, viewers who, you know, look at these things, but I have my captions on. And this was just kind of notes back and forth. And so I was confused about the editing style. There was a couple things that I put here in terms of editing where the graphic would like go to full screen, then go into the like phone screen, then would zoom back out. I mean, that's cool. It's some interesting editing choices, but I don't think it made the first 17 minutes strong for me. It was just kind of like weird editing choices, but I mean, I get it. There's a strong emphasis on capitalism, and I felt that was prominent in the first 17 minutes. I get it. They put it over our heads quite a bit. And then the last thing I put was like decision making. Who makes the decisions? Obviously, you know, we think humans do, but according to them, it's a AI. It's a lot of different artificial intelligence. And so who does make the decision? And then I put who in underline. And so it's between a 2.5. It wasn't it was kind of intriguing, but it kind of wasn't getting me to where I needed it to be. And then most importantly, what the ratings I saw high ratings. I heard friends who said, dude, this is great. Some of this stuff is pretty good. High ratings from people who don't really watch Netflix tuned into it and saw it. So I was very intrigued. And then I saw the first 17 minutes and was wondering why I gave it a 2 or 2.5. See, I'll stick with 2.5. I wasn't impressed with some of the things. It was okay, but I gave it grace to get better. So I said, okay, I'll leave it alone. I won't say anything. I won't post anything. And so, yeah.
For the first 17 minutes, it's all intro and build up. That whole 17 minutes is the hook. It's the first paragraph of the novel, right? So what I wrote was, what do they do with that data? That's a question they're posing. I think this is a well-made discussion by a lot of people who at one moment are at a loss for words when asked, what is the problem? That was a really powerful moment in a documentary when you're asking a lot of people to talk about the same thing, and you ask them all the same question, and they're all experts in the field, and they all are at a loss of words. Or it's such an important question to them that they have to really pause and think about it before they say anything. And that was just really a striking moment in this introduction. So I thought that was a brilliant way to introduce the story of the film. I thought that the setup that they're doing is really dramatic. The dramatic story that's playing along with the people being interviewed, these actors that are playing the roles of regular people in the house, in the family. That reminds me of a similar documentary series, Mars, that I saw a few months ago, that does the same thing really well. I really like this aspect of it, because a documentary with just a bunch of people talking and B-roll isn't as compelling. So I really like this new trick or technique that these are doing. But I look forward to hearing all of our complete thoughts and cases, and the people in the films in the film as to what they're saying the real problems are, and they had quite a few. So there will be bombshell. I end and ask, will there be bombshells revealed that we don't already know about? That's what I wrote. And so I was leaning towards a 4 at the end of that 17 minutes.
Okay. So first, I will state that I actually saw, surprise, the trailer for this one. And in the trailer, I was initially a little bit confused because I was like, is this a documentary or not? Because I recognized some of the people as actors. So I didn't know what we were getting into. So that's the first thing I wrote down here. Is this a documentary? It has fictitious characters in it. So to your point, Bryan, I thought that was a very interesting way of not to just be talking heads, right?
Yeah.
See what they're talking about kind of put into action and what it looks like. So I thought it was interesting. What I don't know is, can this still be called just a documentary? I don't know, because some of it is definitely made up. And so I don't know. That was something I was asking myself. It's like, should we have a new name for documentary that has some fakeness in it? I don't know, whatever. So that was just something I was just thinking. So the more and more I was writing about this, I realized, and we'll get into this later, that it was hard for me to just stay focused on the social media part versus just internet in general. So y'all may see it where I go off, and I'll try to restrain it. But these are the things I wrote. I wrote, we are greedy. We want everything right now. We're gold diggers. We want to monetize on everything. And then I put parentheses, why? Why do we want so much money? Why do we have to have everything? I said, so far, nothing being said is new to me, but I really wanted Corey to hear it. I am not an early adopter. I'm one of those late to the party kind of people when it comes to technology because of trust issues, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so while I absolutely feel I'm just as guilty as with some of this stuff, I'm also aware that I'm doing it more. So that's why, I think there was one thing that stood out to me that I wasn't aware of. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically what I was hearing is stuff that I know about, but I also think it's a generational thing, which I want to talk about a little bit later too. But at this point, I was basically feeling like, wow, so far I liked what I saw. And I felt like I gave it a 4 too, Bryan, at this point. And I said I felt like it should be a legal requirement to watch this prior to getting a phone or graduating from elementary school. And then I also wrote, in part, I blame the government. So I'll get into more of that later, but that's how I was feeling at the time.
All good points. All good points. All of you guys made very valid points. I wrote in the first 17, very interesting. I love the filmmaker's approach, kind of like what you guys were saying, to make it mainly a documentary in a film style, also using actors. When I saw the trailer, I didn't even pick up on the fact that some of these people were actually actors. I just took it at face value that it was a documentary because of the way that it was edited in a trailer form. So I didn't really pick up on some of those actors. I thought that some of this business lingo is kind of going over my head, some of the things that they were actually saying, but I still understood basically the principle of what they were trying to get at. I didn't realize how recently this film was made, that it was a 2020 film. It's a 2020, it was released in 2020, but I didn't know it was also made during the same time period until they mentioned about the coronavirus. So that's when it really kind of clicked, when you started seeing those news clips and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, this is actually really, really recent. And then I said, I want to see the algorithms of what my mood is like throughout the day. I am so curious. So when they were talking about, hey, they show you everything. They see everything that you're doing. They know when you're bored. They know when you're excited. They know you were da-da-da. And they showed that graphic of all the algorithms. I was like, I want to see mine. I want to see that. And then I said, this makes me want to get off the internet already. And I said it's all about the dollar and subliminal selling. So this gave I gave it 3 stars at 17 minutes. It really didn't hook me until like that 15-minute mark, where I was like, okay,
what
now
I want
I'm
people
really
to know
interested
is that everything they're doing online is being watched, is being tracked. Every single action you take is carefully monitored and recorded.
I kind of got hooked. I was like, okay, this is going to be really good.
So real quick before we dive into this, I told Corey I wanted, and I've never done this, so Corey, you're going to have to tell me how to do this, but I wanted us to just look at our phones and see where our average time is we're spending on our phones, just because I have no idea what mine is, and I'm just interested in knowing what it is. So Corey.
So it's all going to probably depend on what iOS you probably have.
Okay.
But if you go under settings, there should be something called screen time.
Yes. Okay.
And I think if you click on see all activity, so it shows you a daily average. And then when you click on see all activity, it should tell you the apps that you've used the most for that day. And right now, I'll go ahead and say mine personally. I have used 9 hours of Twitter today. Today.
I was surprised. Mine's 3 hours and 13 minutes.
Of total time, total screen time?
Yeah.
Oh, just today, not the week, right? Just the day?
It says daily average is 3 hours, 13 minutes. Down 49.
Okay.
Down.
I clicked the wrong thing. You're wrong. You're right. I clicked the wrong thing.
Okay. Down 49% from last week.
Okay. So mine is 6 hours total screen time today. 1 hour and 45 minutes on Twitter.
What's your total average for today?
6 hours.
Or average? Okay. What's your average, Jeremy?
Mine is 6.5, and then an Instagram an hour and 2 hours.
And so I have to assume this is just having it pulled up, not actually looking at it, because that's everybody sitting there.
Sure, not closing it or anything.
Right. So I'm going to show y'all what mine says, and this speaks to how I feel about me. Can y'all see that?
Turn on screen time.
Okay, so that speaks to me and how I operate when it comes to Instagram and all that other stuff. I don't really get into it. I have a Facebook page that I use, kind of, just, to check in or whatever. And I have Instagram and Twitter, but they are just for promotional purposes. Like, I don't really use them. I use Facebook that's probably really the only social media thing that I use. And I did MySpace back in the day, but I thought this movie was really interesting to me because I think what I took away the most from this is that me being the age that I am, I remember the world when we didn't have Facebook and all this other stuff. I remember when we didn't have the internet. I was there when we all got them 500 AOL discs and all that other stuff, and we're dialing up, and all we had was, a black screen with green typing on it or whatever. So because of that, and I think this is kind of like the corona thing for me too, because of that, I know how to live outside of that. I know how to be a complete person without it, because I didn't used to rely on it. So like I was telling Corey, if I leave the house now and I leave my phone here, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go back and get my phone. Well, back in the day, we always left our house with I didn't have a phone. Like, I'm driving all over the highway, have myself a good old time. I wasn't concerned about not having a phone. So I can't imagine what that's like if you grow up in it where you've always had it. And they mentioned this, what that's like. I mean, you are dependent on, you don't know any way outside of that. And to me, that's the scariest thing, because I do think it's only going to get worse. And I don't think social media and things like this are bad. I really don't. I think it just amplifies issues that already existed, which I think is basically also what they were kind of saying. Not only amplifies it, but like globally amplifies it, and it can amplify in 2 hot seconds. Because it was interesting, they were talking about the girl and how, somebody said something about her ears and how it was making her feel, and seeing that they only talked about girl suicides and girl stuff going up because of social media, not boys. And what that made me think about is the fact this stuff with girls, this has always been happening. Girls are used to being talked about how they look and feeling, bad, or, whereas guys, and not to say that none of them do, because I'm not trying to, say anything about anybody's personal experience, but typically we know that this is something girls have always dealt with. And so I dealt with it. But suicide was never something that I really thought about. But at the same time, I didn't have 50,000 people online looking at it and saying crap to me, right? I had the people at school talking crap to me. I could hold my own with 10 people at school, but 50,000 people, I don't know. If I had grown up now, I don't know what kind of person I would have been, because, I feel like I'm a very strong, independent, person. But I can't say that would have been who I would have been had I grown up in this digital age where, because we all, all of us can let what somebody says get to us. But I just think it's so amplified now that it's absolutely out of hand, ridiculous. I really, really like this movie, and I feel like I'm going on and on. There are other things I want to say, but I'm going to let y'all talk. And I'll come back and throw stuff in. Okay, good.
Oh, all good.
No, you make very valid points, Dana. I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm the same way, where I grew up remembering not having these things, specifically social media, because that's where this movie is mainly talking about, not just necessarily having a phone. But even though I grew up not having these things, and I know how to cope and to communicate and to socialize without having these socialized platforms, I personally am guilty of falling into that trap of addiction from the social media platforms. I unfortunately and guiltily fall into the trap of possibly suffering from depression or from different things like that because of how these social media platforms have impacted me emotionally, because I feel like I have developed friends or fans or something like that because somebody has liked something that I posted, or because somebody has retweeted or shared something that I posted, that it equates to me being popular, right? Or someone liking me, when I know that person really doesn't know who I am. But I thrive on the fact that they like something or they shared something, so that that must mean that they also like me. And if I didn't have that as a platform, do I know if people actually like me, or do I know if people actually are my friends? We've gotten out of this. I feel like we've gotten out of this routine of being able to just go out and just socialize with people without having those devices with us, or having those tools with us to say and justify whether these people like us or dislike us. And it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It can be used for good, I'm not saying that social media is bad. It's definitely used for good because I've been able to get some things out of it. I've been able to give some things to people out of it. And it's a way of communicating not only from just friendships, but also jobs and opportunities and stuff like that and helping one another, communities, blah, blah, blah. But there is this toxic part of it that consumes us and gives us the ability to be addicted to a form of drug that is through a app, or through a platform, and it's really, really scary. I agree with you, Dana, that I really, really loved this movie. As it kept going on and on and on, it was very eye-opening. It was very preachy in a way to me, but not in a bad way. It was just like it was somebody telling me about myself. And sometimes you really don't know these things about yourself unless somebody tells you. You know that they're there. You know that you do these things. So the whole time I'm going, I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. And normally when we're watching a movie or we're doing something, 9 times out of 10, I'm on my phone. And I'm on a social media to see what other people are doing when I really need to be focused on what I'm currently doing at that time. And it goes with work. It goes with just being out with, friends and talking in a certain situation. How many times you've seen you go to a restaurant or something and most of the people at the table are all on their phones? It's like, how do you have a conversation with somebody and you're also talking to them, you're talking to other people on the phone. You can't do both, and it's just really, really scary. And I hope and pray that, like they kind of said at the end of the film, that we figure it out and we figure out a way to turn it and make it, to a better thing. And it's not turning into a dystopia and turn it into a utopia. But I don't know. The way that the world is going right now, and I'm guilty of it myself. I don't know if I'm ever be able to see it happen. I really don't. It's hard. It's really, really hard. So I agree with you that I think that this is something a lot of people should watch, before they get into social media. It can be used in classrooms. It can be used in all kinds of stuff like that, psychology classrooms and everything. I think it should be a requirement if you do go down that rabbit hole. And so I gave it a 4.5. Like I really didn't. The only flaw that I may have seen is that sometimes with documentaries, I'm sorry, I keep going on, but sometimes with documentaries, they can be one-sided. I really felt like this one wasn't as one-sided as some of the other ones that I have seen. They do show the positives and negatives of both sides. There is a whole lot more negative than there is positive, I think, at certain points. But I thought it was really well-rounded and really just eye-opening at some of the things that we may not look right there on the surface of what's happening every single day in your own lives, whatever. So I loved it. I thought it was great.
So this film is a documentary, and documentaries can have points of view. They can have a side because they have a purpose and a mission to tell their story, the story that they want to tell, to make the point they want to make. It's not news. It's very different than news, who is traditionally supposed to be subjective, or not objective.
Right.
Objective. So it's absolutely okay for them to be one-sided and to be afraid of the point they're making. It's just like the inconvenient truth. Climate change is a problem. We've got to face it. We've got to do something about it. It's the turn of the century, and we can get in front of this and fix everything and do all this stuff. They're not necessarily saying, but on the other hand, nah. They've definitely have a point to make. So it's totally okay for documentaries to do that. This, I thought, was awesome. I love all the lower thirds. Former. Everyone was former this, from Google, former, Instagram, all of them. They were fantastic. I wrote down that I wanted to look up the Center for Humane Technology, and I wanted to look up Jaron Lanier's book, 10 Reasons to Delete Your Social Media Accounts Right Now. I know that that book must have come out maybe last year or a couple of years ago, because those kinds of posts have been prevalent for quite a while. And when the big stink with Facebook came up, everybody's saying delete your Facebook account. And so, I dried up an awful lot on Facebook in the last couple of years. But I didn't delete it. But I don't know that I check it every day anymore.
But why did you delete it?
I didn't delete it. I didn't delete it because I called so many people that I was following. Like, I didn't unfollow. I mean, I didn't unfriend a lot of people in the last 4 years. I just unfollowed a lot of people. So I whittled down my feed so much that there wasn't really a whole lot of stuff on there that is that interesting anymore. Because it's like, okay, it's 10 people that I really care about, but and I think my Twitter usage has gone up probably, but even with Twitter, I'm not actually tweeting a lot. I'm consuming stuff. I'm not sharing a whole lot of stuff, and I've never been a retweeter or a heavy retweeter. But yeah, I'm surprised that said 3 hours today. I caught myself trying to figure out why that was when you were talking, Dana, and I'm like, I gotta put that down. But because in the details of it, it was mostly the messaging app, texting, texting my family, where are you, that kind of stuff. So that's part of the magic they described, the technology. It's like, it's not all having the technology and these tools are amazing. The point about being able to click a button and have a car show up and pick you up, those kinds of things are fantastic. Being able to order your food, from the menu on the screen, on your phone, even when you're in the restaurant, or to pick it up, is amazing,
But what is it worth? Like, what's the cost for all of this stuff? I mean, that's
right.
Kind of how I look at it. Like, I think on one hand, there is so much great stuff and it's so amazing and it's great, but you got to realize you're paying for it. And they talk about this, but what I realized and what I told Corey in this is I realized this has opened my eyes up to, not just this, but just in general with everything going on lately, is, and I use different words, but I'll just say how easily manipulated a lot of people are. Look, I think on every level, you can manipulate all of us in some way, shape, or form. So I'm not excluding myself from that. But things like tomorrow, somebody telling you the earth is flat. I don't have any idea why you would believe that. But you would have to prove that to me.
Yeah, I don't get that either. Yeah.
Especially if you're older. Like, if you grew up and that's what you knew from the beginning, fine. But you can't take away my beliefs and everything that I have felt so far up until this point with one Facebook post, or not even 10 or 20. I feel like I don't use Facebook, Twitter, and all that as a news source. And I also don't just go to CNN as my news source, because I'm very aware that they're sending me stuff that is on a certain side. It may not be completely on a certain side, but it's totally biased. So I also go to Fox, and it's completely biased too. I was joking the other day that they were talking about, I don't know, like CNN was reporting something crazy Trump did. So I wanted to see how Fox was handling it. I go to Fox and, they're like some recipe of the day crap or whatever. Like, it was very obvious you're trying to avoid it. Maybe you're, making it bigger than it was. I don't know. But I feel like it's important. And again, I don't know how you do this if you didn't grow up outside of this. But it's important to me that I don't take any of this crap at face value. I go and look it up for myself. I don't just take, you said this, even with stuff that I want to believe, like the president said something ignorant today. There is probably 99.9% chance that happened.
I'm gonna kiss everybody. I'm gonna kiss everybody.
But I like to go and see it for myself, you know, that, and I think it scares me that people don't do that, you know, and I also feel like at the same time when all of this stuff was rolled out, there's no way we would have known this. There's no way that we would have known that people were going to use this to track us, to do all this other stuff, right? And to say that, hey, you initially put the like button there to encourage things, you know, make people happy, but you have to think about stuff like that. By putting that like button, if people don't hit it, what is the message then? You know? So you may have thought you were doing something nice, but people who are like, oh, nobody liked what I wrote, they must hate it and therefore hate me. You know, it's like, you got to think about stuff on both sides. And I just feel like there was nobody to protect us, is guess what I'm getting to with this. Like when Facebook and all this stuff is rolled out, there's nobody to protect us. I don't feel like the government has done its job in protecting us. I feel like Facebook, I know there's been a lot of like court things and all this stuff going on, a little too late as far as I'm concerned. But I feel like they were just allowed to kind of do whatever they wanted to. Part of it may have been because it's new, but at the heart of all of this is money. At the heart of all of this is money. And I try to take it back and I'm like, okay, if the heart of this is money, why is it money? You know, and I'm not talking about the survival money. Like we all need enough to like have a roof over our head and be able to eat. But like they said in the thing, when you're already a million or a billionaire, why do you need more? You've got more money than you're going to spend in your lifetime, Jeff. Why do you need to keep accumulating?
Nobody ever thinks I have enough money. Nobody says.
There's got to be some point you're like, I have enough. Oh my Lord.
Most don't. Most companies. Well, you're right. The companies don't. And it's like when you get to the Bill Gates level, then you start your foundations and you start doing all that stuff and you try to start making a difference. And it's like we need more Bill Gateses.
But what is it that makes us feel like until we get to the Bill Gateses, we can't protect? Why do we have to have so much? I mean, you know, what is it that we're, and I don't know the answer to this at all, but it's like, what is it that we're missing? I mean, because Corey and I talk about this in our lives as too. Like on days like we might be tired and wish we didn't have to do so and so. A lot of what we do is because we created this. We created the monster and we have to feed it. So therefore we have to do A, B, and C, even though we don't really want to. So the solution would be, well, stop feeding the monster. You don't have to have that. Well, all of a sudden now it's a whole different, I can't do that, you know? And I worry because I don't know how you get out of this. I don't. Like I read all these books like Darknet and Freedom and like Daemon or Demon, however it's pronounced, like all these books about this kind of stuff. And it never ends good. Like it basically ends like you have to start over caveman style. I don't know how we're going to get past that because it's like you've given so much and people are so used to it. How do you take it back? Without people having to fit. You know, I just don't know. And then I think we're pulled into it when we don't want to be like, I'll give you an example of my mom, and this is kind of outside of social media, but it's the whole internet and all your, because when I think social media, I think my personal business getting out to the internet and all my business out there. So that's why I'm a little more protective of it. But like my mom, I'm like, Mom, you know, you should just pay for something online. You don't have to, or you can just use your credit card when you're in Walmart or something. No, I don't want them having my da-da-da-da. So my mom is a check writer. What do they do with your checks now? They process them electronically. That check doesn't go anywhere. And so it's like, even if you don't want to be part of it, you're going to have to be part of it because you're going to be pulled into somewhere down the road. And that's why I feel like there needs to be legit protections because there's nothing that I can do as a consumer to stop that. Like there has to be something bigger than me. You know, I know I have to do my part, but if I do my part and you're not doing yours or the companies aren't doing theirs, then like I'll never win. But I mean, I hate to be just so negative, but I just don't know how we pull back from this. I really don't.
Well, I think that this film is doing a good job in making people talk and making you think and making you just pull back or pause and really think about what it is you're doing and how you're using these tools. I really identified with that family in the reenactment at the dinner table, putting all the phones down. I took a picture of my family at the dinner table once a few years ago, and all three of my family members were at the dinner table looking at their phones. And I'm like, no, I have to take a picture of this. This is, modern family. And so it was happening. And I absolutely identified with being the father of a kid who would smash open a glass jar to get their phone if I'd put it in there. That, I could totally see one of my kids doing that. Absolutely.
And to me, it's very reminiscent. That reminds me of like being a crackhead, or a crack addict or something like that. Like if you have somebody who cannot be away from their phone that long, to the point they're going to do that, something is wrong. And it's not just the phone. I mean, there's a bigger issue there. And and what do you do? How do you go about fixing that? But Jeremy, I'm old. So like, how do you feel about this stuff? Because
I was waiting for y'all to finish. Go ahead, finish.
No, I wanted, because I would like a younger person's perspective on this, because, like I said, my journey here has been totally different than people who are younger than me, obviously, so go ahead.
All right. I was waiting to my L-5 crew.
We're so passionate.
Yeah, no, y'all know I kind of wait and analyze, and I analyze my numbers that, again, pulled up. So the weekly average is 9 hours. And I know exactly why. I track all this, and I know exactly why, because I do social media for my job. I do it for myself. And I know I follow Corey's, I think is the only one on here who I follow. And that I'll post maybe a story on Instagram. Don't really post a lot, but I notice, I work with 16, 17, and 18-year-old first year, second year students. Then my graduate students are probably 22 or something. So, but the first year students, all of this is true in what you all are saying. I was just being quiet as I was thinking about the actual students. I wasn't like overthinking. I was like, I know students who, cannot have a conversation outside of their phone. It's kind of like a peekaboo, like, bruh, take your phone, put your phone down and have a real life conversation. And it's not coming from an old school, like youngin', like put your phone down and you're going to get like, I'm not trying to discipline you. I'm not your father. I'm not your parent. But what I am going to say is that your grade is a 65, but your phone time and you hitting on these women and sliding in DMs ain't going to cut it. So sometimes you have to have these real conversations, especially with Black men who equate masculinity and pride and kind of like, I'm cool on the internet. Particularly, those are the hard conversations that I love having, but that equates to status. So like Corey was saying earlier, likes and people responding, people liking my platform that I'm on, whether it's real or not. So no one said it has to be authentic. Like it can be filters. It can be, particularly I think of Instagram, where you can make up a whole image of who you are. You meet that person and you might say, that's not, I don't, like, what are you talking about? That to me is what I wish this film addressed. It addressed the algorithms, it addressed the social media platforms. But one thing I think it missed is the perception, the way that people are put on. They talked about AI again, but one thing I think they missed is how people use this to live a reality. And sometimes that reality doesn't match your actual, like it's some Inception stuff. I know that's kind of weird what I'm saying, but it doesn't match what you really are doing and going through in life. And I think for me, that's what I deal with students who are on these social media platforms, that these Georgia Tech students and other students of not just tech, but other institutions I've worked with, their life is in this phone. Their life is in the iPad and the laptop. And you start to see if they disconnect from that. That's where the mental health issues, that's what Corey was saying about the mental health and the pieces of where students have depression. And when those pieces are removed from them, they start to like, I'm not fully here and I can't engage with you. And so that's something that is interesting for me, because I grew up with the AOL, stuff. And when I say MySpace, they don't know what that is. When I say Black Planet, they think that that's like they gonna look at me like I'm a foreign alien. Like,
wow.
what's Black Planet? Never mind. I'll school you later. We can have a conversation. So and I've started to notice that I, putting myself personally in there, have to keep up with that or I'm lost. I can't have engaging conversations with these students because I feel like if I'm not on the newest Pinterest board, if I'm not on the newest TikTok, if I'm not on the newest, I thought we were on Vine and we are on TikTok now. So what's the newest, so that has I guess my hours are up on my phone here, but that's also manifesting in my mind to have to keep up with this new age, whether I, like Dana was saying, whether I want to or not. It's going to hit me in the face whether I want to or not. And so one thing that I proposed when I was writing my notes and when I was kind of writing my 17, and then I always write a couple excerpts under there, is that what if they did focus groups? What if these directors and former directors or other people actually did kind of like these focus groups with people or individuals who might use it or do surveys or do something like that? I would have loved to hear more like practical, like research and focus group stuff to see that, okay, this is stuff is what you're telling us. So you're saying you can, like Corey was saying at the beginning, you're telling us you can look at who we like and who we pictures correlate to kind of how we feel and the emotional intelligence part. Do a focus group and take some real life practical people and expand that out. That's a big chunk of where I stopped at 3.5. I think 3.5 is where I stopped. I was like, put that realism into it. And that would have pushed this a lot further for me. As a person who does science and psychology, I would have loved to see that real life. I know the actors and, they did a good job, but I would have wanted more practical examples. And that's what was totally missing. I was like, man, like I was waiting for it and and I didn't get it. But maybe that's just my own kind of one perspective there, but it took it away from me because I think a couple of you said it too, like this could be used in classrooms. And I feel like it could be a module. We're in quarantine, so students are using technology more than ever. They are on their phones scrolling while they're in class. Believe me, I know. More than ever. And so I feel like this would be a good, I don't have to show the whole thing, but I would love to show a first 5-10 minute kind of clip or edited clip of this, put it in my module for my class and call it a day. But, that's kind of my opinion on it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those points would make additional good movies. This has its point to make that the user is what's for sale. You're being sold. If you're on a free service, you are the product. They're making that point, and that point's being made a lot. But I think that was just really one of the main goals of this. And so there's a lot of really important points about all of these things that could be their own entire movies. I think you're, absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I think about it. And so, Jeremy, the way you put it, and I know you were talking about the pillow thing, I do think that what we heard in like the first half or the first 30 minutes is the same thing we heard at the end of the film, right? They were kind of just repeating it in different ways. So it probably would have been nice to see some like real world examples. You're telling me that this is what you do. Show me what that really looks like. I understand your concept. But it would have been neat, if somebody was willing to do it, to let them see, hey, I don't know that these particular people have access to that stuff anymore. So who would be able to do it? I don't know. But it would have been neat to really see what that looks like. I think to me, the first step, I think, is education. So that's why I was like, and that's why I like the idea of maybe showing it to your students, is because, again, if they grew up in that age, this is what they know. So they may not even be aware that this stuff is going on in the background. I think first making people aware, I mean, that's the first step. Because if I don't know what I don't know. So if you don't tell me, I have no idea. But at least making them aware of what's happening with stuff when they're really doing it. It's just I think that's a great first step of something to do. But I mean, yeah, now just like, I want to see more. What I hate is that all of these, and we mentioned this earlier, were former. I want to know what people who are still working in these places, knowing that this is the kind of stuff that is happening, that because of the social media, or in part of, because obviously social media itself didn't do all of this, that these bad things are happening. What are they doing to combat that?
Well, they had one example, Mark Z saying, well, we'll just have to write AI to fix this problem.
Yeah, because you always ask.
Totally clueless. Yeah. So I think that's also the point they're making, is that these companies are not actually really interested in solving these problems.
Of course not.
Yeah. And you hire these Georgia Tech computer sciences and students who go to Silicon Valley and who come back to us are like, dude, like, I thought this job was me hacking or doing some ethical thing. It's actually unethical and I hate it. And I'm like, dude, I thought you wanted to do this for 4 years. But they're like, I did, but I didn't want to go through creating a whole new algorithm for something that I don't really believe in. And so there's an ethical side of this too. Again, I'm just kind of telling you all pieces I wish it would have addressed, which is there's an ethical side, and there's obviously they touched a little bit on the unethical side, but there's also some like ethics and morals and values stuff that like really I would have loved to hear more of, both like Dana said from the current people or the former. That would have been, I know like some of them were part of that ethical, they were part of this group, this center for like even bringing some of those representatives to talk through what that means. Business ethics is pretty cool if people don't know about it, but if you don't educate people and kind of like put it in this social, dilemma, just kind of gets skirted over. And I mean, they had a lot of content to cover. So I'm not saying that they could have squeezed it in this hour and so, but I felt like that was so prevalent to the conversation because that's how decisions are made. And that's how these young students, like I said, are flying. You're flying a lot of my GT students over to California. They're doing work and they're doing computer science and all this stuff, but they don't know they do not know what they don't know what they're getting themselves into because they've taken an internship, which is a little glimpse of it. You get work experience, but you get a glimpse, then you get full time into it. And you get smacked in the head with this stuff, and it becomes overwhelming, too demanding. You heard some of the people on the film even talk about it, so I don't have to repeat that. But just something I thought about.
What's interesting to me is, I was just going to say, what's interesting to me is that it's hard for us to come up with an idea of how to actually fix these problems, right? And so we're faced with, just people just telling us, you have this problem or this is going on and blah, blah, blah. You have to have self-aware that, these things are going on. And so like for me, sometimes I do want to remove myself from these situations. I do want to remove myself from social media, but I find sometimes it may impact my job. Sometimes I use social media for my personal job, my side job, I'll say my side hustle, but then I also use it for my real job. And so many of these companies and businesses that people belong to incorporate social media into the workforce that you have to be forced into that. I bet you there's probably some people who don't even have a Facebook account or didn't have one until they started working at a certain company because the company was using it and they're like, you need to be able to use it in order to do your job. I have a coworker who she does not have a Facebook account and she can only do but so many things at her job. In her job. And so they don't ask her to do certain things because she doesn't have a Facebook account. But I'm pretty sure they would like her to have one so she can contribute more to the team and to the company. And that's a hard thing to do. That's a really hard thing to do. And just like any other addiction with social media, it is very hard to break. It is very hard to break. So it's like, Bryan said that he was weaning himself off of it. And I asked him, I said, well, why did you not just quit it? And then, you're like, well, I cut back. It's like, okay, I understand that. But it's like an alcoholic saying, I was drinking all the time. I was drinking I was drinking, 3, 4, 5 times a day. Well, now I only drink on Sundays or now I only drink on Saturdays around social people. It's like, yeah, but if you really want to quit, like, how do you...
I think it's a little different because I feel like this is the difference to me, that there is good in it as well as
yes, I know that.
right.
Yes.
So I think because I think about, I keep in contact with people who are my true friends. Right now, if you cannot handle your alcohol,
right,
then yes, you shouldn't drink it at all. Right. But if you can drink responsibly, and I think that's where we need to get people to. I don't think social media is bad. I think it has been used in bad ways.
Right.
But I don't think overall that it's like completely a horrible thing. And what you were talking about, and this is something, again, I feel like we're not protected, and I don't know who should own this, but when your company asks, and it's not a Facebook or a YouTube company, you work at Joe and Bob's pawn shop, is like, hey, I need you to put this app on your phone. We should be able to push back.
I know.
I should not have to be on any application that takes my personal data that you, as the company I work for, do not own, and provide it to you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Everybody knows, like, I'll be like, in my job, they have apps. There was an app during COVID. You could do your COVID screening stuff before you came into the building. We have an app to order food from. They have like different things, just throughout I don't sign up for any of that. Even the email on your phone, I don't sign up for that. When again, I remember when I used to, back in the day, when you work. When you went home, you were home. Like, we didn't drag all this stuff with us.
We no longer live in that society anymore. That's the hard.
But we could. We just refuse.
Yes,
you can, and more people should.
Yeah.
You should protect your home. You should have work-life balance even when you're working from home. Absolutely. You should be really rigid with your hours. Have a start time and a stop time, and it should end so that you can step away from it. Absolutely. One of the things about not quitting, I think a lot of this is about education. And so when you're aware of the problem, you can start to change your behaviors. If you know that how you're being manipulated, and if you are looking at your feed and you notice, oh, that one says promoted, this wasn't shared. This, I'm going down my Twitter feed and it's like, oh, or my Google News feed or whatever, and it says this one's promoted. It's like, oh, well, isn't that funny? I was about to click on that and it's promoted. Well, maybe I don't want to click on that. But isn't it interesting that that's what I am actually drawn to? So I think that the awareness helps you change what you're doing, just being cognizant of it. And I think that's helpful. And films like this help point those things out in a fairly entertaining way. Could they have made this point in a 5-minute package for local news? Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
They should.
And they should. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have a question for all y'all as content creators.
Yeah.
How do you feel knowing that you're on the other side of this as well?
Mm-hmm.
So all those analytics and stuff that they're talking about, you get those from your viewers and things like that. And, as you want to promote your channel, you're going to have to look into that. And how do I move this? How do I get viewers from this area? How to get them to watch it longer. They talked about that, keeping people, so like even on our channel.
Yeah.
Great. Yay, you watched the video. I'd really love you to actually watch all of them.
Yeah.
So it's funny because watching this, to me, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. On the other side, I'm like, yeah, but we really need you to do this. So, again, it goes back to that whole thing because of money, right? We want to monetize, but only because producing content, as we know, is not free, But like, how do y'all feel knowing that you're kind of on both sides of it?
Well, I think it really depends on the kind of content and the kind of channel that you're producing. So we're we're not pushing conspiracy theories or anything. We're just talking about films and TV, and we are actually feeding the streaming services. So we're in advertising for these big conglomerates that don't really need us to advertise for them, but it's something that we are really entertaining ourselves. I mean, the whole point of us getting together and watching movies was just this desire to get back into the theaters a couple years ago, to let's go back to the theater and make this a regular thing. Let's give ourselves an excuse to go and enjoy the movies in the theaters. It became affordable, and we were entertaining ourselves, and we just fashioned ourselves into this podcast. If anybody's watching this video, this might be episode 4, but there's really 200 episodes of this podcast that don't actually really exist. We've called ourselves a podcast since the beginning.
You never know.
Yeah. So I don't feel I absolutely we're part of a cog in the system. Absolutely.
But I think the intent, like you were saying, I think is
exactly.
The intent was not, let me see how I can profit off of these people, right? It's organic. This is just what we want to do. If it, makes profit, if it doesn't, whatever, so.
Yeah. I mean, I do keep in mind like you were saying, Dana, there's a positive, negative. I look at the asset-based, like I use a lot in my work, asset-based instead of deficit, like looking at this as a bad thing. But the reason I look at this as a more positive, it really brings me joy and positivity, seeing different things, seeing students do well, having a job after being knuckleheads, seeing myself grow in certain areas. And pictures are very powerful to me. So to see images of different transitions of life, both, I know they do the memories and 2016 years and you were in Europe and don't do that to me. I can pull up my own pictures. I don't need algorithms to show me my own pictures. Thank you, Instagram. But I like the positivity of using social media and empowering people and helping people, but knowing that there's always another side to it. And I'm always flipping, I guess, to answer Dana's question, I'm always like flipping a coin, figuring out. I might think it's positive and good, but I have to remember some people might not view it the same way I do, or might not be at the same place. And so even though my perspective and my lens might be a certain way, it's not always the case. And that's what I was saying about the reality thing, is that I have a reality of how I think it is, but it's also social media, which is this kind of digital, on the phone, on the laptop, but what am I doing in real life? Am I wasting time in it? Am I spending, some days I spend more time focusing on a little nuanced social media post. And I'm like, I could have just got 3 tasks done or 4 things done. And I'm sitting here and Bryan and Corey as editors know that same with video, you can be nuancing, tweaking something so much that you're like, I could have been doing something else. But I chose to make that decision, so I have to live with it, right? So
I will say that, one of the things that really I picked up on just watching the film was when they were doing the dinner table experiment and, told them to just put their phones away or whatever. And same thing with the male lead actor who said he could give up his phone for a week or whatever. And it's like, he became this person where he didn't really know what to do with himself. He's bored. He didn't really know how to socialize. He didn't really know how to cope with the world. And a lot of people are like that. I personally find it a relief and some type of joy out of it by giving it up for a week or giving it up for whatever. And I've done that. When I go on vacation, especially a place where I know that I can't be communicated with, I turn my phone off. And for that entire week, there is a sense of relief. There is a sense of joy and happiness to realize there's more out here than there are these 3 apps that I use every day, constantly, all day long. And then when I come back from that vacation, first thing that I do is I turn it back on. I want to get caught up on what it is that I missed. And I realize the things that I left behind, I didn't need. 9 times out of 10, when I come back to look and see what it is I missed, I go, I didn't miss nothing. I really didn't miss anything. And so it makes me wonder, do I really need it? Can I cut back, like Bryan was saying, and pull some of that back and gain some of that relief and gain some of that, sense of joy and happiness back by just cutting some of it off? I probably can. But it takes me to be self-aware and to be strong enough to do it myself, because just like with any addiction, you can ask for help, you can get somebody's help, but if you don't want to help yourself, it's not going to happen. It's really not going to happen. So, but it's extremely, extremely hard. Like, I fight with it all the time. I really, really do. And I'm 42 years old, and I should not be fighting with how my emotions go based off of a like or a tweet or a retweet or a share. Like, that is stupid. That is absolutely asinine to me.
I think we all have, as they would like to call it, a vice, right?
Yeah.
So yours may be the need to, get that attention from Facebook. Mm-hmm. Somebody else may, eating makes them feel good, or drinking makes them feel good.
And that guy said that about the
all have
in his pocket.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like we all have something that, as part of life we have to work through. And so, that may be what yours is. But like I said, I'm mostly worried about those who don't know that there's life without a phone.
Yes.
And I think, and I mentioned this to Corbin when we were watching it, some of it starts at home, obviously. Yep. Like, I have seen movies, because obviously I haven't been in a classroom, so I don't know how realistic this is, but I'm assuming it is. When kids are pulling out their phones, and I'm talking about like grade school, doing all this, and I don't know why that's okay. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a lean on me, you can't bring it to school kind of person, but I'm not understanding why it's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, I would have never in school thought it was okay, to pull out my boot disc and get on my seriously, to start using my phone in the middle of class. That would not have been okay. Right. And I think somewhere we made it okay. And what we said is, it's about the kids being safe. Yeah. We were safe without this, Anyway, because this stuff, like I said, none of this stuff is new. It's how they're handling it. We see it more and don't know what to do with it.
I think you in a pseudo way answered your question, because earlier when you said students are getting their news sources from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, these are students I talked to probably going in tomorrow. Yo, I heard Cardi B said, fill in the blank. I heard Meg Thee Stallion said about president, I'm like, is that your news source? But
I don't understand that.
You said that quite early, and I was like, I think it is. A lot of students now, some obviously are well educated, they know where to go, they've been raised or had some upbringing to know that they're educated as well, because they're at a good school. But not everyone's still. You got students at my school, if I said, pull me up a news resource article about something about Kamala Harris or something, they going straight to Twitter, Kamala Harris search, feedback. And not to say that Twitter's bad, but I'm just using your point about social media can be a gift and a curse. It can be a form of news, but that's fact, because how I know, I have narratives with students every single day that use that as their main news source. And that's dangerous to me. So to me, that tells me that I have a lot of work to do. And those are like kind of out of office, like, come and let me tell you what a real news source looks like. You gotta watch Fox every day, but I'm gonna need you to come out of Twitter search to get all of your news.
Here's the funny thing about that, Jeremy. So this is the thing that I found with Twitter. Twitter is the fastest to get the story out, but it might be wrong. So that's the thing you have to kind of take into consideration. It's like, because we had something was going on around here. I don't remember what it was. And I was like, oh, let's see if WSB is talking about it. And it wasn't on their website, right? I was like, oh, let's check out Twitter, because they'll probably have it up on Twitter first, whatever. So, yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm guilty of that, Jeremy. I am the type of person where I find most of my news from Twitter. 9 times out of 10, I get most of my news sources from Twitter. But it's not a I go and I find out so and so, Jim Bob said this happened, blah, blah, blah. It's that I went to CNN said it. I went to Fox said the same thing. I went to WSB, said the same thing. I went to GMA, that said the same thing. It's that I'm going to all these different news sources, official news sources, and seeing if that information is correct. And most media outlets are using Twitter as a place that they can post their news because they don't have time to write a complete article and make sure that it's factual and make sure that it's grammatically correct and it's posted this place and it's posted that place, blah, blah. And most people's attention span is very, very short. They ain't gonna read the full 2-page article. They want to read the headline. They want to read the first word, right?
But it's about money.
And it's about
money. The viewers, so I'm gonna just say something that's wrong and outlandish on Twitter, so people will look at it.
That's
not to write a good article.
And there are ad dollars and stuff like that are paid, to get those things out there. When we do buys for our social media posts that we put out there, we are always saying, how much money do you want to spend? Well, what are we going to get back from it? Well, how much well, where's it going to reach? What's the reach here? What's the reach there? Every single time. And it goes out so quick. So, for me, and I'm one of those types of people where, my attention span may be really, really short. I want to know exactly what's going on really quickly, and to the point I don't have time to read. I have time. I don't want to put the time in to read these 3 pages. I want to read, just give me the facts. What's going on? Just like Dana was saying about what was going on over here early, a couple months ago, which was a fire. We were trying to figure out where it was, when it happened, and how it's impacting people, right? And with Twitter, it's the best source to go out there and just feed it to thousands of people in seconds.
What we saw was people saying different things. One was a fire in the Georgia power plant. Somebody else said it was somebody. But it wasn't.
Yes,
you decide which way.
It depends on where you go and get it from.
Yes, and that's why Twitter has always been in the top 3 of social media for a long time. People like, I'm confused. Twitter is so old. Twitter, Twitter ain't left that top status for a while, and because of what they just said there.
It's old. What's been replacing it? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
All the other things that have come and gone, Twitter has held on.
Yeah,
and Facebook has too. I mean, so
and it's not just a platform for me to tell Jeremy, for Jeremy to tell Dana, for Dana to tell Bryan. It's gone all the way up to president status. It's like,
oh Lord,
the freaking president has a Twitter account to say whatever he wants and to report on whatever he wants. And what it also does is the problem with that, it can be a good thing. It can be a good source for you to go and find out information. But it could really, really be bad because there's no limitation as to what you can say and what fights and things that can bring out, disputes that can bring out. And a lot of times people pay more attention to the dispute that's going on than they do the actual story that happened in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's a good point.
That's part of the problem. And that's what feeds into the psyche of people and their mental health and stuff like that,
But wasn't I think just the nature of what Twitter was meant to be? It was never supposed to give you the actual story, right? Because wasn't it set up to only give you a handful of characters and this?
It's still that way.
So they knew what they were doing. They didn't want you to tell the story.
And what's amazing is that it's designed to take you somewhere else.
Exactly.
It's designed for you to share a blog post or a news article or something to take you off of Twitter and back to somewhere else.
But they don't even do that nowadays. They don't want to see it anywhere
because
else.
They want you to be able to see it inside a little pop-up so that you can watch the video in place or see the whole photo or whatever. Right. So, but as a TV station, you want to share the posts to the article, even though it's only 2 paragraphs, to come back to the news station's website so that you get the ads from the news station's website. You play the video off the news station's website, etc. But the news stations have to have the video on their own site, but they have to also put it on Twitter. They have to also put it on YouTube. They have to put it everywhere where all the eyeballs are. And
coming from a media company, it's like you know, most of your revenue, your money is coming from those ad dollars that a lot of times we're trying to find out from television. You know, you get most of your ratings and most of your money from actual TV. Well, now people are not watching TV. So it's like, you know, whenever you do see a post from a media company, they are saying such and such and such happened. Watch the rest of it on this platform, on TV. Come back here, just like you're saying, Bryan. Go somewhere else. But you know, a lot of times people aren't doing that.
Right. And so the news organizations that are going to survive cable cutters, they have to put their content where the people are. They have to diversify.
I think what you said, and it's so sad that you had to say this, Corey, is when you were like, and I mentioned it earlier, I think, or kind of referred to it as well, but it's like you see something on Twitter and you're like, I have to go and basically verify it. And you can't just go verify it at one news place, right? I mean, you have to verify it at several different of them to see what's right. And the thing is, if it's a fact, it should be a fact, and it should be the same fact everywhere I go.
But it's just like the telephone game. It's like you tell one person, it's going to change when you go to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. You know, or somebody else is going to spin it into their own agenda, you know, and put something else on there. So, I mean, what can you do? But a lot of time people don't have the time or want to put in the time to figure that whole thing out. It's when they hear the latest gossip and then send it on.
This could go completely down a rabbit hole, because another thing I noticed about being in the United States.
They talked about that in the movie too.
it could, but being in the United States, we all have this feeling that, you know, we have the right to do whatever the hell we want to. Everything. It's my right. It's my right. You know, all this other stuff. So if we were like, hey, you need to get some education, or hey, don't be on this, you know, until you're 6. Oh no, it's my right. You don't tell my children what to do. That's why I don't know. I feel like we may have just dug ourselves too deep. How you get out of that, I don't know.
But here's the thing. They had the food pyramid. Just the idea was just to teach people about nutrition. It was totally wrong, but it was, the intention was good.
Right.
And nobody forced you to eat like a big old plate full of bread every day. But it was the bottom of the food period, right? Pyramid. And so
those grains.
It's the grains and the bread and all that. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, you know, Schoolhouse Rock. It's, you know, it's education, putting the information out there, making it available, putting it in social media.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this documentary, I mean, I don't know about you all, but every time I logged into Netflix, it always was in the top. Like, you know, those, I think that y'all can help me with the categories, top rated, and then it's like most recent. Yep. And every single time we logged in, or I just logged in, you know, randomly, it was always up there. So I was like, that's one reason why I chose it back to the beginning, is because I kept seeing it. I kept seeing friends talk about it. The ratings were pretty well, you know, that we looked up. But I just kept seeing that little graphic. I don't know what it probably was, an InDesign or Illustrator graphic. And I was like, okay, so let's see what it has.
If anything, what it is it's a talker. It's something to get people, you know, communicating and talking about what's going on right now in social media. Whether you agree with it or you disagree, it's at least getting people talking. And hopefully it's making people make a change in some of their habits that they're actually doing. So for me, I look at it as a positive thing, that I need to reevaluate some of the things that I'm doing as far as social media goes, and try and figure out a way that I could pull back away from that addiction of social media, because that slot machine scenario,
swipe down, refresh
scenario that he was pulling.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. Totally guilty. I'm at that slot machine. But there was two more things I was going to say about this. I don't want to keep going on all night long. But what was really enlightening to me was the Myanmar genocide conversation that they were having. That was just like, they're signing up people for Facebook as soon as they get a phone, like that's insane to me.
Yeah.
So
They
that
may
was,
have thought they were doing something good, right?
I know.
Trying to.
Exactly.
I know. So that was one thing. The other thing was the main lead performer, the young kid. His name is Skylar Jasondo. We'll say Jasondo. He was the guy that was in Time Freak.
That great movie that we love.
Yeah. Because I was like, where do I know this guy from? That's where he was from recently what we had seen.
I recognize his face, but I didn't know what his name was.
Yeah. That's where he was from. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I have to say something to you about TikTok. So I have an issue with TikTok. I think TikTok videos are fun to look at, but as a crafter, I don't like them because people will get up there and they'll craft something on TikTok and it looks like it took you 30 seconds to make it. And people are like, oh, that's so easy. Why are you trying to charge me $15 for it? It should only be $2.
Well, that goes into what Jerry was saying, right? Paint a picture of something that's false. Like, and social media does that a lot. It allows you to do that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, if y'all have time, now one of the things, I'm sure YouTube tracks me all over the place for this, watch 5-minute crafts, the truth. Like, so go in there and find all the 5-minute crafts like exposed and all that stuff. It is so hilarious because 5 minutes crafts is nothing they make is 5 minutes and half of the stuff they make is not even possible or whatever. So if you go in there, you watch, it is hilarious. And again, why are they even allowed? They were showing at one point you could soak strawberries in bleach and it would remove the color from them. Why? Now, I mean, the way it's posed, it's like, oh, now I have white ones. For what? You can't eat them. They say don't eat these. No, they do not.
Wow.
Listeners, do not try it at home.
Okay, so before we wrap this up, okay, Dana, I know you have a Facebook account and you have a Twitter account and Instagram, but you don't really use them. So
I do Facebook, not the other one.
What do you have as far as social media apps?
What do I have? I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have Twitter. I have a Snapchat I haven't touched in a couple months, but I have a Snapchat. And I don't really have a TikTok, but people send me stuff. So you know how you can share it and just view it. I actually do not have an account, but I view stuff on there. And that's about it. Yeah, that's in terms of apps. I have a Slack, which is you can share that. I don't know if that's the same. So that's.
No, I wouldn't say it's Slack. Slack is more like a messaging platform type of thing.
Yeah.
Like Teams, kind of like, or whatever.
Yeah.
So what do you use most out of those social media apps, would you say?
Yeah, I use Instagram the most and Twitter, Facebook being a third. I only post significant stuff on Facebook, like when if I got programs or people send me Facebook events more than anything.
No.
And I don't know why, but I'm like, okay, so you want me to come to it, but
see, I don't want Facebook to know I'm not home.
Yeah, right. You gonna get this Jeremy? You gonna get this? No.
Yeah, checking in at the grocery store or at a restaurant. It's like, oh yeah, I've never got that. I never understood that.
Same. And Snapchat to me is so much of a mystery because I feel old. As an oxymoron as that sound, stuff disappears so quick. I'm like, how? And I feel slow too because I'm like, you know how you can save it and you can go back to it. I miss that memo sometimes when stuff pops up. And then myself, I'm thinking, oh, I'm trying to be cool. I'll open it. It disappears. So I think that's why, Corey, to answer your question, that's why I have not fooled with Snapchat, is because I can't get the full experience because it's so inundated with this kind of you disappear in 24 hours. But I miss out because I open stuff and then I sometimes forget to save it. Or if a friend says, hey, this is like they were sending me some document on it, I was like, don't send it to me on there. Because it's going to disappear. And then what if I don't save it? You're going to have to send it.
I wonder if that might fall into the addiction part of social media because you have to be on it so fast. If you're going to miss out, it's like somebody like, oh, you got to go see blah, blah, blah. Well, I missed it. And so in order not to miss those things and have conversations with some of your other friends who are on those social media platforms, you have to stay on it constantly. That could feed into that addiction.
Yeah.
Snapchat is the Black Friday of social media.
Yeah. Seriously.
And then something we didn't, and again, I'll let someone else kind of talk about their experiences, but dating apps. Ooh, if they would have touched on, that's a whole different movie you could do on that. But that has a part to do with it. Why? You're dealing with people messaging, sending you notifications. You're dealing with swipe culture, which is left means certain things, right means another thing. You're talking about mental health. If somebody doesn't like you or don't respond to you, you could go down a downward spiral. So that could be a different, side documentary, but that would have been a cool one to also, I know they couldn't fit it all in here, but.
Very good.
Think about all the information you give them too. Like the apps and the stuff about you as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, but none of that's true, is it?
Look, like the guy, he really is 6'5".
Yeah. Muscular.
You see him and he's shorter than me.
I'm married, maybe not.
240.
Bryan, what about you? Let's move on. Bryan, what about you? What social apps do you have, and what do you use the most?
I would say I'm viewing Twitter, but I have Twitter and Twitter, Facebook. I do have an Instagram. I don't post a whole lot on Instagram, and I have multiple accounts for all of my different internet personalities, and businesses that nobody cares about.
And then you drive a van. You can take that out, but all of that together, right?
Very suspect van.
That's the company van. What are you talking about?
No, the mystery machine does not need any more love.
We've driven all over the country in that van.
I love that van. Did we all give our overall ratings of this film? I was at 4.5.
So let's do final ratings. So you're 4.5?
I'm 4.5.
I started at 4 and I went to 3.5.
Okay.
I went down a little bit because I think that the overall the end message was a little weird and bleak and wishy-washy, and it really did sort of just give us a whole lot to not just talk about, but to worry about, And at the end, when they said, "Yeah, you sound optimistic," and they were surprised,
really?
It's like, I don't feel optimistic.
And then that's scary. The people who did it, they're not optimistic. It can be fixed.
Yeah. What about you, Dana?
So it's funny. So I initially gave it a 4. Before we talked, in my mind, I was like 4.5. But now that we've talked, I feel like going back to the 4, because I do think the message, like I said earlier, that started off is the same message that was throughout the whole thing. So there was really room to do some more. And maybe, and just now what we're talking about, maybe give us some hope or something. And in fairness, guys, we all need to go to their website, right? They threw up at the end, because there may be, how you can help the change, whatever. But based on the video, I did walk away feeling like, I told Corey, I was like, sometimes I think that I'm glad I'm older, because I won't be around in my mind for when this just all completely blows up totally. Like the
senator who said, I'm 60 something years old, I'll be dead and I won't bother me.
But seriously, like there are things, and I'm just like, I don't know how you get out of it, but I also am aware that probably by the time I go, I'll probably see it getting worse, right, and be but it won't be like the central part of my life, right? I hope that's not the case. I really, really do. And so I'll be interested to see what we can do as individuals to affect change on that. There's so many things I feel like need change and that we need to work on. But yeah, I'll do my part if I can figure out what that part is. But yes, where we left the movie. I don't know what that part is, but I'm gonna go check out the website. So 4.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
3.5, 3.5 to me. I mean, it was good. I gave my commentary on what I think could have improved it and pushed it forward a little bit. The ending, like Bryan said, I do agree with his points he made about the last segment of it, but I wanted more in certain areas that, again, I was expecting from not only the trailer, but from everyone who's seen it. And then that first 17 minutes that set me up and then kept me going. I just kind of gradually wanted it to increase. And it did for the most part. Then it kind of went back down and went back up at certain points. Like Corey said, COVID, I'm super glad that they talked about that. It would have been a 3 for me, but that COVID part, that because it's 2020 and it was just made, was pretty cool to me. So it bumped it to a 3.5. But the other things are kind of nitpicky at that point, but I'm okay with 3.5. It was good. I don't regret it, but I do have my thoughts. So
I said, let us know if you add it to the syllabus.
Will do. Absolutely.
We basically are generally recommending this movie. Yeah. Yay.
I think
thumbs up.
I think if anything, it's a talker, something to get people talking. And I would love to sit in a giant room with a whole bunch of people who've seen it, and just see what people's feedback was. How it relates to their personal lives, and
yeah,
that'd be great.
It did kind of repeat stuff that we already had known. What I think they mentioned earlier, I was like, they did it a couple times. I was kind of over here like making noises. Man, I wish y'all would have like heard. I was just like, y'all, we know this. Get to the advanced information. We've hit beginner. We're at intermediate. Take us on to advanced. And they kept lingering in that beginner phase. And I mean, I get they're trying to cater to all audiences, but again, I'm just justifying my score. I was like, I've heard this, I get it, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Don't forget to turn your notifications on.
Put in the comments, like button. No, but we really hope you enjoyed this episode of the L-5 podcast. And we'll see you guys next time.